there, Danish learner. Welcome back to my channel, Danish Matters. I'm Tina Bakker, your Danish friend and tutor. Today, I'm talking about the English language and the English language influence on the Danish language. Before we get started, if you would like a Danish course and learn how to speak Danish, then write to tina@danishmatters.dk. Many languages have influenced the Danish language throughout time, especially German and French. Well, from Latin via French, you could say. However, during the later decades, English is has started to influence our language more and more. Whereas both in Sweden and France, maybe also Germany, have invented their own words in some cases, Danish has adopted the English words, most of them, into the Danish language. This means that we have kept, for example, or adopted into our language, the word computer, whereas in Sweden they would say datamat, and in France they would say ordinateur. Yeah. I do think though that young people in both countries, they might use English still, and also maybe the abbreviation and say PC instead with their letters. The word weekend also exists in Danish, and as you could hear, I was saying this with a single V. That's what we tend to do in Danish, weekend. Yeah. In Swedish, they would say helg, and in France, they would say fin de semaine. Yeah. So, and although my German is a little limited, I believe they would say Wochenende in German. So if you are French or Swedish or German, correct me, yeah, if I'm wrong. The word job also exists in Danish and also in compound words. So we can actually take the word job, put it together with another word, and remember, we put them together when we spell. Even if they're like 28 letters, we put them in one word, yeah? So we would have a word, for example, as jobmarked. So yeah, we have our own word for market. It's almost the same. So we spell it with a D in the end, and it becomes jobmarked, yeah, softy at the end, yeah. So in Danish, we have a lot of words from English which we say and spell the way they say it and spell it in English, at least in their primary indefinite forms, yeah. The challenges arise when we have to conjugate them, yeah. For example, the word job, that becomes jobbe, yeah, or jobbet, depending on where you live in Denmark, yeah. So double B-E-T. So if you live here in Zealand, it would be with a softy ending, although it is E-T, yeah, jobbe. And then job, or jobs, and then jobbene, double B-E-N-E. And I think that English speakers, they might find that a little far away from the original job, yeah? So, and actually I found out that the word job comes from Celtic, gob meaning mouth, and it should then be to mouthful. So I guess that working is a mouthful. We can agree to that, right? Or maybe it meant that once you've finished working, you could get your mouth full. That is, you could get something to eat. I don't know, it makes sense to me, yeah? Over the last decade or so, the influence of the English language has become a debate more and more in Denmark. And recently, the newspaper Information has launched a kind of a project, a public one, where they ask the Danes or the Danish population to come up with Danish words for English words so that we get to use the Danish words instead of the English ones. Their headline is, "Vi vil ikke være så dumme at høre på. Kom med i modstandskampen." Modstandskampen means, we don't want to sound so stupid. Join the resistance. They say that in general, Danes sound more stupid when speaking English, that is, when they use English words within the Danish language, but that they think they sound smart. Yeah. So here you might be a little surprised and say, but aren't there any rules or like laws for the Danish language? Yes, and we do have dictionaries as well. But the interesting thing is that whereas in some countries their institution for the instructions for the native language in that particular country. It's the other way around in Denmark. In Denmark, our language institution that gives out instructions is Dansk Sprognævn. But what they do, they don't just give out instructions or rules, they actually research what the Danes actually say and what the Danes actually write. And then that particular word or spelling or usage of a word might get into our dictionary. It works that way. Yeah, so it's very different. If you're interested in this, then go watch my video called The Mayonnaise War. Some Danes think that, or fear, that the Danish language is going to disappear, and some Danes don't think so, they don't fear it. It's an ongoing debate. And for the longest time, my take on this was that we've always been influenced by other languages and we will continue to be so. And that now it's the English language that is influencing us, just like it was German and French back in the day. However, I must admit that I've changed my opinion on that a little bit. I'm not saying that we can stop the development or even that we should per se, but I do find that the influence of the English language is getting a little out of hand. I'm not an expert, but to me, it seems that the amount of English, or the amount of English words, or the usage of English by especially young Danes today might be way more than German or French was used back in the day. That is, when French or German words were mixed with Danish words. Yeah, not when it was used or those languages were spoken like exclusively. We had a Danish king, for example, who only spoke German. He didn't speak Danish at all. Yeah, so it's only when it was mixed. Yeah, but I don't know exactly. However, when English enters every single conversation or even every single phrase, I find that is a problem. I must admit, though, that I do struggle with this myself. I speak English several times a week, and some of the books that I read are also in English. So I also find it hard to find the correct Danish word sometimes, especially with words like issue. In certain contexts, I don't really think that the Danish equivalent or like the Danish translation really fits. Same thing with biased, although there is actually a good translation for that one. That is forudindtaget. And as you can hear, it's a little if we have to say that. And it's a bit long too, so I guess those two reasons make most Danes use biased instead, because it's just easier to say and it's shorter. Yeah. I think that a lot of Danes, or to a lot of Danes, English just seems easier and easier to use to express themselves, to get their message across. And I get their point. I just think that it's become too much. Although I struggle myself, I've become aware of this, and I try to observe myself and try to find the Danish words when I can. It can be hard to do, yeah, in the middle of a conversation and just searching my mind. But at least I'm trying. It's a sort of a fun little project that I can try out. Let's see how that will work out. Yeah. The newspaper Information is saying that their project is meant in a kind way, not as a kind of criticism of any kind. I find it a both interesting and fun project because sometimes we just pick an English word because it's easier. And in other words, we're lazy, or a lot of Danes, or some Danes, and a lot of young Danes, they don't care. They even might say that Danish is stupid. Yeah, they don't want to use it. Information says that higher social classes of Danes are speaking a modern day Latin, which they call management engelsk, while others are speaking Danish. Yeah, they say that turning to our Danish words will make us less dumme og dogne. stupid and lazy. I'll link to the article so that you can read it if you want to. Yeah. So I've made it a personal project to try and search my mind and find Danish words. It's a little difficult, but I'm trying. In my next video, I'll be speaking a little bit more about the influence of the English language, and I think the video will be shorter than this one, but let's see. And I'm curious to know what you think is happening to the Danish language and how you think it's going to develop. And I'm also curious, I mean, I would love to know language influence in your country, maybe from English and maybe from another language, like another linguistic influence into your language. So let's discuss that. Write about it in the comments. And as I always finish, I only have left to say, happy Danish learning.